I'll just introduce a little bit about Figuring Space. It's supported by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Ruth Foundation for the Arts. The exhibition presents full-scale figurative sculpture in clay by the top artist working in the United States. Dr. Kelly Morgan, professor of the practice at Tufts University, added her integral knowledge of the historical use of the figure in American art over the last 200 years to deepen the clay studio's usual focus on contemporary ceramic art. A group of powerful full-scale representations of human figures serve as a body of evidence to lay bare issues that permeate American art and social culture. The artists assert their autonomy and subjectivity by presenting cultural critiques through lenses of their own choosing: race, gender, class, and anti-war ideas. Roberto Lugo, Kensuke Yamada, Christina Cordova, Chris Rogers, Sergei Isupov, Christina West, Tip Toland, Jonathan Christensen Caballero, George Rodriguez, who just walked in the room. Sorry, you guys can't see him. Roxanne Swensel and Kenming Park. Also, we recognize that the Clay Studio stands on the indigenous territory known as Lenape-Hocking, the traditional homelands of the Lenni Lenape people. We would like to take a moment to reflect on the role of the Lenape as the past, present, and future stewards of the land, and the role of all of us to join in their tradition of respect and caring for the land and each other. And now I'm going to say thank you to Tip and Sergei for joining me, and I will introduce them. Tip Toland lives in Vaughan, Washington. She earned her MFA from Montana State University. I always have to change that. In 1981, Tip is a full-time studio artist and a part-time instructor in Seattle. She conducts workshops across the United States, Europe, Australia, Mexico, Taiwan, Bali, and the Middle East. She is represented by Traver Gallery in Seattle, Washington. Her work is in public and private collections, including the Yellowstone Art Museum, the Renwick Gallery, Nelson Atkins Museum, the Crocker Museum, St. Petersburg Museum of Art, the Dom Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Arizona State University Ceramics Research Center, the Eleanor Wilson Museum at Hollins University, the Kohler Arts Center, the Portland Museum, a lot of museums all around the world. Welcome, Tip. Sergei Isupov graduated from the Art Institute of Tallinn, Estonia in 1990 with a BA MFA in ceramics. In 1994, he immigrated to the United States. Isupov has a long international resume with work included in numerous collections and exhibitions, including the National Gallery of Australia, Museum of Fine Arts Houston, Museum of Art and Design, New York, Racine Art Museum, and the Museum of Fine Art, Boston. His work is featured in numerous books, catalogs, and magazines, including Postmodern Ceramics, Sex Pots, Eroticism in Ceramics, The Ceramics Surface, The Art of Conceptual Craft. He teaches workshops and lectures internationally at museums and universities all around the world, recent residencies at the Bray, at Kecskemét in Hungary, Guldgård in Denmark, and in 2001, he was awarded the Louis Comfort Tiffany Biennial Award. And I would just like to add to that list that he did a workshop here at the Clay Studio in January, celebrating our show. Okay, thanks, both of you. I'm going to ask you the first question that I always start with, which is how and why did you make the brave decision to make your life in art? And I'm going to ask Tip to start and then Sergei.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for all that you've done to pull this show together. It's a beautiful show, and I'm honored to be asked to join this show. So thank you so much. And the Clay Studio, I can't say enough good stuff about it. It's just beautiful. Everything about it's so beautifully laid out, and I really enjoy going, but visiting. All right. So I've been thinking about this, and I just remember when I was about in 7th or 8th grade, I don't know what I was doing, but I was fooling around on the piano, and I was thinking, what do I want to do for the whole rest of my life? I usually didn't think in those kind of global terms, but I thought, well, I could be a honky-tonk piano player, but I'd probably have to spend a lot of time in bars and smell cigarette smoke. And I thought, no, I don't want to be a honky-tonk kid. Then I thought, well, I'm pretty good in sports, so maybe I could be a gym teacher. And then I thought, no, I don't like the smell of gyms that much and locker rooms. And so I thought, well, the only thing left I can do is draw. So I thought, well, I'll be an artist then. That's what I'll do. Because you can do it right up until you die. So it was, believe it or not, that decision back when I was that young kind of made a dent, and it sort of put me more consciously on the path of being an artist. And it was sort of a given that I would be an artist, since I just always saw faces. No matter where I looked, I would always see faces and all the bark on all the trees and the clouds. And either I was insane or I was going to be an artist. So something like that.
That is the only time I've ever heard anyone answer that question and include the word honky tonk. So thank you for that.
It's great.
Lovely.
I
Well,
guess
we'll dive more into that, but we'll have Sergei go next and then we'll talk
Yeah.
more about that.
Well, me too. I'm really glad to be in this, participate in this exhibition. It's great space, definitely. And it's funny enough, my first American appearance being in the clay studio, I think this 89 or something, 86. I still been student in Estonia. And Jimmy Clark, previous owner, previous director, he just noticed me because I just have one-man show in Tallinn, and he chose it. So it's like really deja vu goes circles. So I really always clay studio to me big deal, but space is so much different. So I don't know, just the name same, but all the rest different. Thank you, Jennifer, to invite me for this. It's nice group of people. It's nice. I think it's always inspiring to be with other artists because this is what kind of give you motivation. You see who you are or why you do it, and you feel like you're not alone. That's always great. My story, how I start art, it's I grew up in a totally different country. It's hard to describe. It's Soviet Union, and I have both parents artists. And my father painter and my mom ceramic artist, and so I've been introduced to art a long time, and mostly like through like a duty. Well, if I want something, parents say, "Sure, you have sketches or landscape painting, and you get what you wanted." Like ice cream, sure. If you need to be 3 sketches, you get ice cream. It's funny. So my parents grew up in socialism, but made me a capitalist back there. So, and my mom working in a factory like designer, and a lot of times if kindergarten closed or something, she take me to factory with her. So I remember the smell of rotten clay. Everybody hate it. I love it. It's remind me childhood, you know. And if here I need to clean it, you know, old buckets, the smell made me feel like perfume. Anyway, so and my parents want to be artists because their parents not have parents artists, and they feel like if their parents be artists, it'd be easy to communicate. So they wanted to make it easier to communicate with us. But of course, if you're a kid, you don't know this, and I always feel like I need to, you know, it's like obligation. But as parents put me in a painting school in age of 11, where I need to leave. It's dormitory. And after I got like on my own, without parents and all kids around who do art, and that you need to take exam to go, and it's only one in a republic. Right now it's separate country, Ukraine. I grew up in Ukraine. So, and of course, like all these students made you feel kind of, it's already not parents who tell you what they need to do. You want it to be better. And this is where I first time, like same, like Tip mentioned, like you realize what you wanted to do. And in this point, I kind of realized I can't do nothing else because I can't good with nothing, anything except this art. And really quickly, maybe because my parents are artists, I get a little bit better like other students. So, and my ego grow me bigger, right? But parents want me pushed to the art, but this not give me choice. They give me choose what kind of type of art, because you're able to be any like clothes designer, you know, printer, printmaking, anything, you know, like it's art really big directions. But ceramic always for me been game, because I always made from clay presents for my classmates. It's been easy, personal, and fun, and always sort of in it. I grew up and we not have much objects, so every time you give objects, it's kind of more precious. Right now we're full of objects, it's already not the same. Anyway, so, and this is how I got where I am, thanks to my parents.
What, that's amazing. And the parent thing is so important. I was gonna kind of go back to Tip and ask the same thing. You know, it's one thing to say like, this is all I'm good at, or all that you're good at that you can imagine doing, but you must have had examples, or at least, you know, you were encouraged perhaps, or can you talk a little bit about like how you went from that idea that art is what you wanted to do to actually then, you know, okay, well, oh, I could apply to college and do this, and how it turned into something you felt confident that you could make a living doing?
I've never felt confident I could
Okay.
just get that right off the bat. Even today, I'm not confident I can make a living, but it's, my parents are very special in that they really did encourage all of the creative kind of arts. And if my father's a writer, and he's a journalist for the newspaper, the Evening and Sunday Bulletin of Philadelphia. Maybe you've heard of that. He was a journalist for 30 years. And so he also wrote books on the side. They were all nonfiction. One play he wrote. And so there was that. And then he also did these great little colored pencil. He loved trees, and he would just go out and draw trees. So it was kind of a given that was appreciated. And he even taught me a little lesson once about receding mountains and how they become more and more purple. And so he showed me things like that. And then my mother could make anything with her hands. She could knit anything, she could stitch anything. And so she was always doing that. So they decided that early on that I must have had some talent, and they put me into a little pastel class at night. And still I can smell the fixative, and it's a lovely smell to me. It probably is terrible for your brain cells, but I really liked it. And that was, and my elementary school art teacher was nothing but appreciative. And were it not for him, I think I wouldn't have gone into art. My sister Phoebe and I had the same art teacher, and he was so in love with art, and he saw something in us and he just celebrated. He was just like so celebratory about anything I made. And maybe I liked all that attention. But and I know my father was happy that I went that direction and didn't go the direction of a honky-tonk piano player.
Gonna make a mark every time somebody says the word honky tonk. See, Sergei, maybe you can work it in somehow. That's great. And I mean, it's so important to say out loud that those around us who support us and encourage and give children positive feedback are a big part of what we feel like we can do, what we believe in about ourselves. So that's so important. I think that the idea of communication is really something that you're both touching on. Like Sergei said, that this was his parents felt that they couldn't really communicate with their parents, and they had a desire to communicate with their own children and wanted to create that language. And maybe tip a little bit that your father was a writer, communication was his career. I'm interested if you could both answer the question of how you feel that the figure, because since you both focus in a lot of your work, most of your work on the figure, what is it about the human figure that you feel helps you communicate your artistic vision with the viewer? Who wants to go first?
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Well, maybe because my first education been painting, and we educate really classical drawings, classical paintings, really boring. Like model, like a portrait, like 40 hours drawing class. So you use it, all these pencils, 6B, 4H, like different value, how like with eyes, you draw with one pencil, with lips or background with different type of pencil. It's pretty boring, but there's still you have a lot experience what you carried with you, because in my case I start so early. They later give me a lot of times to forget what I learned. But anyway, communicate through these figures been always, I want to say, pretty easy, and you kind of go straight forward. You don't need to make some abstract symbol that if you draw something what everybody recognizes, it'd be easy to readable. And I remember in the history of art, we have really interesting teacher, philosopher. He talked about how in Greece, where they have all this mythical people, myths, and everybody knows this myths. So it's like a kind of Bible, but just different myths. So, and all this dishes being decorated with symbols. So say like if you have guests who sit too long, you bring him dish with story about like what happened if person sit too long. So you just eat this food and like, oh, and you're like, well, time to go. And he just mentioned how this things are like in everyday life, this art is symbolical, or like this being narrative in a way. So you're able to tell not directly maybe, but with some symbolism. And I remember I've been pretty shy person in the school, and I won't communicate more with girls, So I start making different objects with suggestion, like teapot, cups, and it works very well. And I like how they're direct connections. And of course, if this is some being part of figures in forms, be much more clear symbols. And maybe because it's culture what I come from, so like their icons so popular, because maybe in history there's not be a lot of people illiterate, so for them you need to draw symbols. And a lot of times after my first been immigration from Ukraine to Estonia, age of 18, where different culture and not speak, I not speak Estonian in the beginning, and I communicate through the symbols too. And everybody easy to read. And player same with after I moved to US, it's so art become like part of language, and it's so easy if I do figurative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's direct, like you said, it's clear. It's a symbol, but it's not hard to read. And especially if you're dealing with different languages. And that's something that Kensuke talked about when we had a talk with him, that he came to the United States and went to college here, actually, again, because he had already gone in Japan and he didn't really speak English very well. And the only class he felt comfortable in was art, because he could make people understand what he was trying to say on a more complicated level. So that's great. Tip, what do you think about communication and your choice to use the figure? Or should I restate the question? I'm not even sure if I remember what the question was.
Well, the way it started for me was just doodling was the very first, and there were always the figure where I doodle. I was never interested in, except, a little bit of the clothing, but it was all faces, predominantly different, how many different ways to make a nose or a mouth, or just always the face somehow. And then it started to, and then I had to go to actual college, and that's all. I wasn't good in any other subject in school except for like gym or something, sports. But so I was always in the art room. I just felt at home wherever, if they had an art room. So then I go to college, and then right away, back in the day, they had you do classical, just like what Sergei said. You had to draw the plaster bust, and you just had to draw it until with the light source and all of the shadows. And it's truly boring. There's only just basically all that you do, and then you kind of move into the live figure, do life drawing, and you do it and get sharper, learn how to see and learn how to kind of navigate that in a classical kind of a way. And they sort of get you to be looking, and you're in art history if you're an art major anyway, so you're having to study all of the great classical works throughout history. And then, but it wasn't until I went to graduate school, and I was never a ceramic major. I was always a drawing and not even painting, just drawing. And then I had to, for some reason, I was a little potter, but and so I applied in ceramics to grad school, even though I didn't do anything in clay per se. But they said, Tip, you can't be in a ceramic graduate program and just draw on the clay or paint on the clay. That's all. You have to do some relief. You have to do something with the clay, squish it a little bit or do something. So then it was like, well, I'll do bas-relief. So I always thought in terms of a painter, two-dimensionally. I never thought about three-dimensional until 20 years after grad school. And then I was like, I just can't do a bas-relief anymore. I have to see what these things might look like three-dimensionally. So, but the greatest influence was probably the surrealists. And that's what got me really focused on interpreting the figure, put the context, and where you could put the figure. The whole context became the symbol. So that was the metaphor. So when Sergei was talking in symbols, I didn't so much use necessarily symbols, but the whole surrounding context became a metaphor. And that's what I really liked thinking about.
Yeah, I would like to add it too, because Tip remind me, my parents always give me things, if they leave somewhere and give me like play all day, in the evening, I need to draw composition or narrative story. And usually what you done in this day. So and this has been really typical. In the end of day, I need to spend, I don't remember, hour for drawing what happens. Usually this happens in the summer. So in the summer you spend all day in the beach. So you come home and you, in the time of spend all day, you kind of thinking around you. So what I draw after I come back. So you kind of collect this narrative or stories, things. And later in the evening, I made for parents, not for me, I think. But later I hooked. So later I start like collect the stories and think like, oh, this is image be great for if I wanted to represent this day or this moment. Thanks.
Oh, I just want to pause and say that I really appreciate what your parents did, because having a child and trying to get him to do stuff like that, and he does like art, but I always think, oh, I'm going to have him draw a diary. Like I would love to do that. And then in real life, it's actually very hard to manage all that and, you know, get them to do it when they're saying, oh, mom, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So kudos to your parents.
Yes.
And then so Tip mentioned the surrealists being an influence, and you know, I'm not sure that I have thought of your work in terms of surrealism, although certainly it's uncanny, and I love to hear that having you say that it's sometimes inspired by surrealism, and certainly makes sense. But I have often made the direct reference with Sergei's work to surrealism, because it often has kind of a Dali-esque, in my opinion, like strangeness to whatever is happening in the image. That so is that something, Sergei, that has been an inspiration to you as well? Or is it just all?
I always been misunderstood why they won't put label.
Well, it's more just like, is that something that you looked at and were interested in? Yeah.
But same time, I noticed, because I decorate sculptures, a lot of times it's already so disturbed. So just adding something else made more surrealism, because you kind of like from one side you see these things, from other side these things. So I think start working both sculpting and painting made me kind of looks surrealist, because it's have distortions already. I not made exactly sculpture, because all my sculpture is like a canvas for my painting, but it's three-dimensional canvas. So in a way, and I like it actually, where technique shaped me a little bit what directions to go. And I remember my father all the time tried to inspire me to give me different tools, like pencil with like 6 different colors, or new brush. And this is for a short time made me like really into it, and let it get boring, you know. So, but like he's probably been really good with this. He really wanted. I not have this patience. I'm a father right now. I want to deal only with myself. Well, yeah.
That's
so you appreciate it later about how much people give it to you.
Yeah.
Well,
and all these things that I hear in common. You both started as painters, were two-dimensional, and you sort of evolved into sculpture and clay later on, which may be part of why your work, you both have such precision in your work. I think that's a good word to use for both. I'd love to show people images of your work in the show, and have you each talk a little bit about the works that are in the show, because we're already past our halfway mark. So I think I'll show everyone this one first. Okay. So here's an image of the strange fisheye view of the whole gallery. And oops. And we can see that Tip's piece. Oops, the people in the room can't see very well. Hold on. Okay. Tip's piece is what you see when you walk in. And now that I've given many tours, it's really interesting to be able to talk about each work of art as itself, and then how it relates to those things around it. So I just want to point out this beautiful connection between Tip's Love Song for Ukraine and Christina Cordova's Eva 15, because they're both referencing girls in this very transitional period of life. Love Song from Ukraine is about an 11-year-old girl. Eva is 15. And honestly, I thought this sounds ridiculous, but it took me a long time to realize that they both are basically wearing the same clothes. In fact, I think it was somebody on a tour who said, "Why did they both have the same outfit on?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Oh, okay. Well, yes, that's true. And Eva actually kind of collaborated with her mother and chose to be wearing those clothes. But I don't know. I also had a bunch of college students in the other day, and they said, "Well, everybody's wearing midriff shirts now, so it makes perfect sense to them." It's like, okay. So maybe Tip can talk about that a little bit. And then here is the piece from above. And I do have another photo, but I'm going to look for it while I ask Tip to talk a little bit about why she made this and how it evolved during the making process. Is that okay, Tip?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Oh, should I start?
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was 11 or right around there, my grandmother had an old harmonica she gave to me, and it was just this most beautiful sound. And I remember kind of breathing into it and breathing out, and each breath had its own note. And so I kind of like, that's my breath, in, out, in, out. And so then I thought, and then at the same time, I was hearing so much on the radio about the refugees that are leaving Ukraine and going to Poland or going underground in some shelter, and how hard that would be, and how difficult, and how you would be so homesick, especially when you just don't even know if you had a home to go back to. And so there's something about this that's very sentimental, I know, but it's also so much about longing and yearning. And so I have a big chunk of me that's inside, that's always sort of very sensitive to longing and yearning. And I'm not even sure why, but I just kept imagining she had this harmonica, and she just had this cot that they would give her to lie on, and she'd just take comfort in just playing a little tune for a love song for her home country, and that would somehow ease her her loneliness and her sorrow. And I just that's all the piece is really about. She's the beginning of kind of becoming really an adolescent. So she's like dyeing her hair. She's doing those rebellious things that you would do as a kid. And then her tank top is a bit reflective of a camo. So camouflage, and then just like these sort of shorts that I ignore, that basically you should ignore. Anyway, that's all there really is to it. She's just lost in her own love song.
I found my video, so we get it. Everyone gets a little bit of a better view. Can people see the movie? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And it's another thing that's for me, this idea that she's presented on this cot, she's in transition, and the viewer knows immediately that she's in this sort of transitional period or place, even without the title. And I think that that's brilliant, that just, something could be changed. And people are fascinated by her dirty feet. I mean, everyone who comes in, it's like a thing that people focus on right away when they're standing in front of this piece, because it brings it to life in this very evocative way. So I think that the casualness of the blanket, I have had people ask if everything's clay. And I'm like, well, not everything. Tip is good, but she's not that good. Not the blanket.
The harmonica is clay though.
The harmonica is, yeah. So it's really, really special. Thank you for that. Okay. And then I have a video also of Sergei's. It's so important to see them in the round, I think, which is something that I love about the exhibition. Is that
I love how Tip break all this. I don't know if they're say rules, but like just look at totally different way of using clay. So you not think what material is this. This is what my all the time idea. If people ask how you do it, I said, well, I wanted to do so clear. You don't need to ask me, because it's idea doesn't matter what material is this. So Tip doing this so well. I'm every time I want to ask how you do it. Even I really don't like to hear if people ask how you do it.
Well, I'll just say that it's never, I'll get feedback for this, but I don't have really any allegiance to clay. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And if it's paint, then it's going to need paint. If it's, anyway, that's why I don't want you to look, and that's why there's never hair that's clay, because
Right.
It'll just, I'm made out of ceramics. I don't want you to think that so much.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Sergei.
I really like how you twist reality with creativity, with viewer, and with subject and everything, and work so strongly. In the end, I've really actually, even I wanted to ask how you do it. Every time I think it's not at the same time, just made me feel so honored to see this work. So I always feel like it doesn't matter. So it's really works great.
Yeah.
Thank
I think
you.
it's good for the viewers as well, because people often, certain people who come to the clay studio look and say, but well, this is not all clay. Why do you have this here? And I get that question a lot, because we often have things that are mixed media, and they're almost, well, maybe at least half of the things in the gallery have something other than clay as part of them. And I think it's important for people to know that you can be an artist who works with clay and ceramic, and it doesn't mean you have to only use that material. How could you be an artist if you didn't have any kind of, flexibility? You can just use clay, but you don't have to. And the idea that our gallery would somehow not be able to show something if it wasn't completely made of clay seems so crazy to me, but I get that feedback sometimes, which is interesting. Not criticize it, not that people are criticizing, just that it's sometimes a surprise. Yeah, which I think is strange. But
and same time, I'm really fascinated how team have patience too, and at same way she done it so well, where you actually not see this difficult for her. She do this playfully, but I know how much time to go there, and this is what most difficult to be artist, where you need to give time, and energy, and just attention. And this is what hard. This is what like you kid, you learn how it's hard to stay with one object to the end.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, so let's look at this one object.
Okay.
really 3 sculptures sort of, but and I can show some still pictures as well, but people get an idea. Do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yes, well, because ceramic to me, and I using classical way, like really clay, everything, but same time I wanted to break structure, so something what really stable meet unstable, or something what needs to be solid meet more unsolid or insecure. So this is why men running. So this narrative part try to break form or break shape, you know. So, and kind of with this different duality, I try to make this narrative part much more conflicting things. So if somebody running, somebody stiff and ta 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 ta. But narrative part, not always clear in the beginning, because this process kind of slow. I maybe start first from interesting shape or something idea how I able to make this, and later funny, like, so from technique I start get more ideas, but it's hard to say. It's such a twist between. And I have here like really clear story, like Tip have it. My motivation in work, I want to say this process, like process. So the kind of creativity go in the time like I make it. So it's, for me, it's really important to have this, be alert to the end. So it's technique help me, or technical side help me a lot to be tense with the subject. But I have a lot of visual images, but if I need to tell stories, I'm able to made it up a lot too. Yeah. Because I all the time working to next work and next work and next work. So a lot of times I forgot why I did this one. I think in one point I made small sketch. I just bring it. I made like a small sketch like figurines, and this has been not really exactly work, but I sort of like it, this idea, solid part and figure. So I have a lot of space to tell story. So from this form, I wanted to twist it more. So this is person have just connections between what on the table and what he doing with sculptures on the exhibition. I kind of wanted to have more conflict, and this is why I edit many things. Right. So I think I made so much conflict. So even in the process, I break some top piece, because this is 3 pieces together, and I build them, I build together, and like I painted separately and fired separately. I don't have so large kiln for firing. And I guess I've been working so intensely and wanted to move so much. In one point, I have my studio on the 3rd floor. I living on the 2nd floor, and I've been in my home on the 2nd floor, and I hear something on the 3rd floor made like boom, and something break. Oh, no. I had no idea. I first guessing for a couple seconds. What is this? What is possible? Give the sound. Yeah. Anyway, but so yeah, it's rare. But this work have this narrative part on their own.
Yeah. Great. So thank you both. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions, because I have a feeling people will have questions. But I just want to say again, it's been really absolutely lovely to be able to walk into the gallery every day and spend time with both of your works. I mean, I feel so lucky. So it's been lovely. Thank you for sharing those ideas about the pieces. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask somebody out there in Zoom land or here in the room? We have some people in the room with us too. Or maybe you want to ask each other a question. I mean, not that I don't have more questions.
I just want to say, Sergei, I have been such a fan of your work since I've seen it from the very first parts, and I've just wanted to get inside of your mind and be a fly on the wall, and I just watch and watch you let it unfold. It's just a pleasure. It's never the same. It's always extremely interesting. The narratives, and I'm also narrative too, but you take it to a much more complex level, and I just love your work.
Thank you, particularly from you. It's really, like I say, a big admirer of your artist ethic. And I really like how you always have such a good attitude.
Nice. Thank you both. I think Richard has a question, and then there's one on the chat as well.
Well, I heard a uh-oh from Tip. For those of you who don't know, Tip is my sister-in-law, which is why I kid her a lot. But I want to ask her a very serious question. Tip, I've always been amazed at the deep psychological stories behind your work. And in your earliest works, they were more kind of personal stories that a lot of people have that really probe very deeply into fears and whatnot. And lately, over the last decade or so, they've explored issues like albinism and refugees, and like this current piece, Love Song for Ukraine. And the world is changing around us. And I'm wondering, a lot of your pieces from the last decade have kind of explored things that are happening to large groups of people as opposed to just the individual psychological things that we all deal with. And do you see this as something that might affect more of your future work as well?
That's a great question, Dick. And I'd be interested to hear how Sergei would answer that, like what kind of influence what's going on in the world has on his own work too. Yeah, it has gotten away from the subject matter, and the narratives have gotten away from the personal, but it's always from the personal that I can speak to it. So it always has to hit me at an emotional level deeply for me to be able to go, oh, I can imagine how that whole group of people might feel. So it's that I project how I might empathize with refugees and people and I can never fully identify with people with albinism, but I know maybe what it's like to feel like you are very unsafe, and how you almost have to leave home to be able to be in a sort of a prison, but it's the only place that you'd be safe. Something like that. Children with albinism have to face, but I don't know it. I think it's a sign of health in a way, because I used to do art almost as therapy, just art therapy. I just had to get it out of my system and just describe the actual personal psychological climate that I personally was in. And now I'm kind of through those woods, if you will, and more stuff, I guess, from the world news is affecting me, and I can't get around it. It just enters in, and I can't help but empathize.
Thank you, Tip. And that's a great question. Richard, do you want to answer that question too, Sergey, about current events and if they are changing or, I mean.
Yeah, I hear this a question and I have same, I immediately reflect on me, like I've been kid, it's true, like all work what I do, they've been really personal. So like, who is this? This is so-and-so, it's my neighbor, and this is dog what just run behind me, ta 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 ta. And right now, I wanted to actually go back to be like really personal, like really made stories, but really personal. But I noticed maybe because I have with like already stage, so this not only for me, I never actually directly see who's see my work. So it's a good things and bad things. So I would like to probably be more personal. And I see like if I made write letter and the drawings in the letter, it's be personal. But if I do right now the sculpture, that's a not really personal, like there I personally involved and personally attached, but all kind of go on a kind of more bigger scale, like say shape or form or colors, but not like, and this is why a lot of times I like it, this naivety artist or my daughter art, where she really draw what she go through. Yeah, it's interesting the questions because I'm right now really want to go back, you know, to be do something what I'm care.
Yeah.
So right now I kind of making some, I'm right now sitting in the studio and I'm making some work, and really this is not what I go through. I like it. I mean, I like it. I sort of right now this idea, I want to making something what I wanted to have it, you know, but it's, I don't know why I made this one too. And I would like to be more personal, but because we do it all the time, do it next, finish this one, make next one, next one, next one, and this become already so mechanically, not always you wait for inspiration or wait for motivation. You just like starting in motivation, come in the process in a different way. Like you got new brush or a new color or new way of using same theme, but with new perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both.
I don't know if this answer or like this
no, just
have
the idea
complement this answer.
Yeah, you're thinking about it too. And I think Tip's answer and yours too, Sergey, that include this idea of empathy, you know, how you want to represent your own ideas and what other people are going through. I've been hearing people using this phrase that artists are the empathy muscle of our society. And I think that it's really important that we are presenting, that artists are making, and that we are presenting work that makes people feel, that makes them feel connected to other humans, because that's really what we must do to keep moving forward, to try to make people understand each other better and dare I say, make the world a better place. So thank you both for making the world a better place. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, there's people are sending big thanks. And I think we could keep talking for a lot longer, but I want to acknowledge that we're at the end of our hour. So thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. And any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, you did say you were interested to hear where we might be going from here.
Oh, that's true. In my email, I did say what's next. So yes, I'm sure if people need to leave, that's fine, but I definitely want to hear what's next. So let's do that. Go ahead.
Well, I've decided to give clay a rest because I just wanted to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's hard when you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker as an old gal. So I've decided, though, I love drawing so much, so I'm sort of returning to drawing, but drawing great big things. And so mostly heads. Anyway, I just wanted, but now I'm starting to just doodle and just like, I just want to return to something very original in me that always did doodle and always just like made marks and just retreat into some very honest, original place. Not that I've felt like I've gotten away from myself, but I just want to begin back where I used to begin.
That is big. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it sounds like it could be really refreshing and invigorating. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that mean that this is the last for a while? This is, this is the whatever. We don't need to put words on it. Okay. Sergei, do you want to tell us what you're doing now?
Well, I always interesting to see how like one process take to other, another, or some ideas start give you the new idea, see same things with new perspective. And I've been asked in Estonia this year, this 100 years anniversary of education in ceramic, and they asked me made like they wanted to make big event with this, and they start become popular this fire sculpture what I made couple before. So I start thinking how to use it same. I'm already feel like familiar with this technical part, and wanted to give more challenge for this one too. How you making so this work looks good in the process of opening, like this is performance, and looks good after. So I made a bunch of like small sketches, but start turning me for some small, like first I start with sketches and then it become like a real work. So it's kind of funny. So I'm working right now, like some sketches. This is a color, blue and white. It's a color of city of Tallinn. It's blue-white strips. Yep. So this whole idea, this fire goes through this holes in the legs. I don't know how it actually works, but and come out from this little holes. So they're holded some ceramic vase. But I made them a lot, sort of. This is my old theme, but I kind of like it too, like all these holes what come from like fire going from this holes. Or just single, well, I'm not been sure how much the space where fire goes through, because it's fire needs to go through sculpture and let it come out from some openings. So I kind of made single person who hold it ceramic too. So
that's going to be amazing.
Well, that's sort of I'm playing with this, and if I'm still not sure. This my time in the studio. It's fun or work.
It's both. It's both.
Right. Supposed to be work.
It's
but work. It's a lot of times it's just fun. I'm lucky being in this position. So
that's great. That's great. So important. Oh, I'm excited to see those fire sculptures, and I'm excited to see Tip's big drawings.
Yeah, so. Me too. I'm really curious what you do in a two-dimensional.
Yeah. Okay. Me too. Great. Okay. Well, everyone, make sure you come to Small Favors to see Sergei's pieces, and thanks for joining us again. It's hard to say goodbye. Thank you. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye, Tip.
Bye, everybody. Bye.